Thank you for being here, Mr. Volkov. I guess the one question that's on everybody's mind at the top is wondering how Mr. Navalny's health is, and is he getting proper medical attention?
So should I collect several questions or I answer them one by one?
You'll have a 6-minute segment, Mr. Volkov, with Mr. Diot, and then we'll go to another 6-minute segment. I'll announce each segment, and he can ask you as many questions as she or he would like in that segment.
I see. So thank you very much, Mr. Diot. So his health is now better. He is in the hospital. It's a prison hospital, so not a very nice place to be, but at least there is some medical supervision, medical attention. So he is being given like the treatment. That was such a strange form of a public political compromise. So the demand, the requirement of his hunger strike was to get the doctors of his choice, entrusted doctors, to examine him. Putin couldn't agree to that because, I mean, it would mean losing his face for Putin. But the international pressure and the domestic pressure was very strong. So they kind of compromised that he was examined by civil doctors in a civil hospital in Vladimir. They gave the results of the examination to Navalny's personal doctors. They checked, they agreed on something and disagreed on something else. So they agreed on the treatment, and now he's given that treatment that was like approved by his personal doctors. So
okay,
it's
that's great news.
Like,
that's good. So overall, he's doing quite well.
Yeah, it's much better than it was. Well, he's recovering from the hunger strike. It takes time. So the hunger strike lasted for 24 days. You need pretty much the same time for a safe recovery after that.
That's good news. You touched on journalism a bit. I was a journalist for 30 years, so the state of journalism always interests me. Now, in our country, some independent media complain they're not often allowed at high-level government news conferences, or if they are, they won't be allowed to ask questions. So what's the state of independent journalism in Russia? And is it under threat, and what can be done about it?
It's quite close to non-existent. So Kremlin has a very efficient propaganda and disinformation machine. Kremlin has full control over television, media, and newspapers. The internet being the only like relatively free resort where like different opinions may exist and coexist. Kremlin is now actually launching a huge campaign against important independent internet media. The most recent news was that they designated Medusa, the largest independent news outlet based in Latvia, in Riga. They designated it to be a foreign agent, which is a very nasty designation because in fact, it prevents any advertiser from working with them. So it just influences the media financially in a very bad way. And of course, if they manage to kill Medusa, they will go after everyone else. So to support them, so Medusa is now trying, for instance, to launch a crowdfunding campaign. Hopefully, they will be kind of able to collect enough donations to keep going. So to kind of reimburse for the loss of the advertisement. But it's, of course, like very hard time for independent media on one hand. On the other hand, we see a boom of investigative journalism in Russia, for instance, and actually like people are really trying to find like independent information. So more and more people turn away from the television because they realize now it's all propaganda, and people are actively seeking for looking for like independent dissent opinion online. One last thing, very short. What's really important here is the positions that major internet platforms would take, because technically, of course, Russian government has passed a bunch of laws that make like also anti-Putin publication, any sort of anti-Putin publication on the internet illegal, of course. And they impose huge fines on Google, Facebook, Twitter, and so on for not deleting this information and so on. So far, Google, Facebook, Twitter are not caving to these attempts. They pay these fines, but they don't delete this information. If they manage to carry on, that would be okay. If they start to cave to these government requirements, this will have a devastating impact.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I've still got a minute or so. What actions do you think you would like to see the Canadian government take to doing in the release of Mr. Navalny? I know obviously we've had some sanctions. What else would be useful right now?
That's a tough question because Putin is taking this very personally. Putin apparently really feels like very personally offended by the fact that Mr. Navalny dared to survive the poisoning, dared to investigate his own poisoning, dared to return to Russia after being poisoned, and of course dared to launch this investigation about Putin's luxury palace on the North Sea shore, which kind of exposed all this way of thinking that, for Putin, like really money, like gold and red carpets is the most important thing in the world. This exposition was very dangerous for Putin, actually. But it also exposed that Putin really cares very much about money. So our short answer is to sanction his close friends, his oligarchs, the holders of his assets.
Volkov, we were talking earlier about sanctioning people. How about an individual named Roman Abramovich?
He is number one on our list. So that we suggested also to the EU and to UK and to the US government. He is really probably, Putin has many like asset holders, like nominal holders of the assets that are actually Putin's own, but Mr. Abramovich definitely holds the thickest wallet.
Excellent. Just shifting to another topic. I've got a large Ukrainian-Canadian community in my riding here in Western Canada, and they and a lot of other Canadians are really concerned with the aggressive actions Putin's taken against Ukraine. What are Mr. Navalny's views on the status of Crimea and Eastern Ukraine and the threat that Russia could take further action?
Alexei was asked many times about the Crimea annexation, and you could easily find like many of his public statements on this. To wrap it up very shortly, we recognize that the annexation of Crimea was unlawful, that Putin has committed a crime against Russia and Russian national interests because he violated the international agreements which kind of caused sanctions to be applied against Russia that undermined credibility of our country as an international in international cooperation and so on, after he publicly violated Russian obligations towards Crimea according to the Budapest Memorandum of 1994. So now, not always when a crime is committed and when a crime is recognized, it could easily be reimbursed. So when someone kills another person, we could punish the killer, but we unfortunately are not unable to revive the victim. So Putin has created a huge problem for the world, which probably will remain a huge problem like the Northern Cyprus or the West Bank or many other territories for the future. Because, now there is the fact that, 2 million Russian citizens suddenly are there in Crimea. Their opinion has to be taken into consideration. So we consider that maybe like the future government of Russia and future government of Ukraine with some international mediators will be able to build some process to deal with the status of Crimea. So it is an unlawful annexation, but now it looks like there is no simple way out of the situations that Putin created. With regard to the eastern Ukraine, it's very clear. So, Putin's Russia committed a crime against humanity, sponsoring the civil war that has taken lives of 13,000 people. It's a crime. Russia has to stop to support the paramilitaries there in the Donbas region, has to act with agreement according to the Minsk agreements that Russia has signed, so to give border control to Ukraine, to stop supporting those separatist movements in Donbas, and then the situation will get back to normal. That's quite clear for us.
Just a very quick question on, we talked about your movement and how it's being repressed. What's the general state of the protest movement in Russia, and what has been done to suppress it? I was just looking at a Reuters story, and it shows people basically painting over logos of Mr. Navalny, etc. What's happening?
Yeah, well, what's happening is that Putin is very effectively building the society that has been described by George Orwell in 1984, and the painting over the graffiti belongs there, and many other things also belongs there. He's really like acting by that book.
Thanks very much.